He smiled warmly and draped his left leg across her back to return the hug.
Oh, it's all right, Sugar Cube. No harm done. I'm glad you're okay.
She smiled and hugged him a little tighter to express her gratefulness. As she hugged him, she happened to inhale some of his scent, and it gave her pause. He smelled of apples, earth, and a hint of sweat. It was a mixture of work and nature, and she felt his chest muscles stretch with each breath. She found she liked it. A lot. So hunky. The red pony's eyes shot open as he felt her snuggle into his chest, and he desperately hoped he had heard her wrong. He quietly cleared his throat.
Fluttershy? You say something?
The Pegasus leaned back and regarded him with eyes half closed in contentment, a shy smile teasing her lips. Has any pony ever told you that you have wonderfully green eyes? His brain nearly stripped a gear at that. Fortunately, he recovered quickly enough and eyed her warily.
You sure you're okay?
She hopped to her hooves and chirped, "Never better!" She slipped next to Macintosh as he started walking again, and rubbed up against him, adding in an airy voice, "Thanks to you."
You're welcome?
Macintosh wasn't quite sure how to answer, given her sudden mood change. It was confusing to say the least. First she was talkative, then musical, and now she seemed to be flirting. The problem was compounded by the fact that he didn't know her too well at all, if this was normal for her. Applejack did have some strange friends after all. Just then, as they approached the fork in the road, she gazed at him with fluttering eyelashes and a sultry smile. "Wanna see my cutie mark?" He stopped in his tracks and blinked slowly as his brain tried to decrypt the meaning behind these words. He opted to play it safe, at least what he hoped was safe.
I can already see your cutie mark.
"Ooh, you naughty boy!" she giggled, and pranced away down the path to her cottage. This time, Macintosh's brain really did strip some gears. As he watched her retreating form, he could only think of one thing.
What the hey is wrong with that filly, and why is it scaring me?
Thankfully, Fluttershy's cottage was only a short walk now, and in no time it came within sight. Fluttershy waited for Macintosh at the first turn past the fork, and rejoined him. Macintosh did his best to stay focused on the last stretch of road, but he couldn't help noticing the sultry glances the Pegasus kept throwing his way, or when she sighed when her flank accidentally brushed against his. Other than that, she was mercifully silent. Finally, they arrived at the cottage, and Fluttershy paused at the door. "Thank you so much for seeing me home, Macintosh, and for saving me earlier," she said earnestly. He stifled a relieved sigh, thankful that she'd stopped being flirty, and smiled.
Wasn't anything much. The Apple family always helps out their friends and neighbors.
She opened the door and smiled in return, a very sensual smile. "Would you, like to come in for some tea?" Macintosh's jaw fell open as he fought to both comprehend the situation and to keep control of his mind against her inviting eyes. He shook his head to clear it and form a coherent thought. That wasn't it. His second attempt was more successful.
I would like to, Miss Fluttershy.
He stammered.
But, I gotta get AJ here back to the farm and get her to bed, and it's pretty late as it is. Yup.
He grinned nervously, hoping it was enough to satisfy her. She took a step forward, and his smile faltered. "Oh, I'm sure she wouldn't mind," she purred. "Besides, she's asleep already. She can wait a little while to be put to bed, can't she?" He racked his brain as he weighed his options. She was right. Applejack was already asleep, so waiting a few minutes for a cup of tea wouldn't hurt anything, and it was unlikely, he hoped, that anything would happen. On the other hoof, if something did happen, it was a sure thing that he'd draw his sister's wrath. He glanced over his shoulder to Applejack, her body rising with each inhale and emitting a soft snore on the exhale, her peaceful form belaying her well-known temperament. And he really wanted to see his next birthday. He sucked in a breath and straightened himself in determination as he turned back to Fluttershy.
I'm sorry, but she's my responsibility right now, and I have to get her home.
He spoke evenly. The Pegasus pouted pitifully, but then smiled. Oh, Macintosh, you're such a good brother to her. I won't keep you then. Maybe we could have tea some other time. It could just be the two of us getting to know each other better. She fluttered her eyelashes at him. He nodded, figuring it would diffuse the situation faster to just agree to the arrangement. She beamed in response. Wonderful! I'll let you go now so you can get home. A wave of relief washed over him at her words, and he relaxed, only to be shocked when she planted a kiss on the end of his nose. Just a hint of what the dessert will be, she whispered with a wink, and disappeared behind the door into the cottage. Macintosh's brain went into autopilot mode as he turned from the door and made his way down the path without thought. After a few moments, his mind came back online as it caught up with what had just happened. He paused on the bridge over the creek that ran through Fluttershy's yard to organize his thoughts. Still in a daze, he muttered to his sister,
AJ, I really wish you were awake so you could tell me what in Equestria just happened.
Splash. An annoyed sigh escaped him.
You just fell off my back and into the creek, didn't you?
He saw a Stetson slowly floating downstream out of the corner of his eye.
Yep.
A leaf blew over the table, its light rustle the only sound emanating from that part of the cafe. All the ponies seated at the table had listened attentively to the last half of Macintosh's recounting of the night, and now sat in stunned silence. Applejack scrutinized her brother carefully, so much that Macintosh was afraid her gaze would bore a hole through his skull. Finally, she broke her gaze and shook her head. Well, he ain't lying, she concluded. Oh my goodness, oh my goodness, oh my goodness, oh my goodness, oh my goodness! Fluttershy's pupils shrank as she tried to hide under the table. Wow, Shy, I gotta say I'm impressed. I didn't know you had it in ya, Dash said with a somewhat proud grin, and added with a wink, talk about aiming high! You went right at the top when it comes to stallions. There are no words to describe how thankful Macintosh was that his red coat could hide his blush, though he felt a twinge of guilt at seeing poor Fluttershy trembling and blushing furiously. Rarity noticed her condition as well, and pulled her into a supportive hug as she chided Dash. Rainbow, for shame! Can't you see that she's embarrassed enough as it is? She gave Fluttershy a reassuring nuzzle. It's okay, dear. It's not like you did anything last night that you would truly regret. Dash rolled her eyes at Rarity. Come on, Rarity. You know I didn't mean anything by that. But yeah, Fluttershy, what you did last night was pretty mild compared to the stuff I've done when I've been plastered, which I'm not going to elaborate on right now. She emphasized with a pointed glare at Luna. The princess tittered. As you wish, Miss Dash, though I believe it would make for quite a good narrative. She turned to Macintosh, who had regained much of his composure, and asked, Is there anything else you wish to add concerning last night, Macintosh? He shook his head.
Other than taking AJ home, getting her cleaned up, and putting her to bed, I've told y'all everything that happened, I swear.
Luna nodded as she made some more notations on her scroll, which had grown to a substantial length. Thank you, Macintosh. I must say, Twilight Sparkle, you and your friends are most entertaining. Gee, thanks, Princess, replied the unicorn, her voice dripping with sarcasm. Luna ignored the sarcasm. Now, I have finished transcribing your accounts of last night, and I must return to Canterlot. But, before I take my leave, would you like for me to relate your friendship reports to my dear sister? Y'all think we should send a friendship report about last night? Applejack asked flatly.